On February 19, 2014, near the village of Aliya in Hasaka Governorate, ISIS attacked a convoy of about 15 buses, each carrying around 10 to 12 passengers, traveling from Kobani to the Kurdistan region of Iraq. After releasing the women and the children, as well as a few of the convoy drivers, ISIS detained around 160 of the men on the pretext that they belonged to the SDF or Kurdish leadership in the region. They held them at a nearby grain silo before moving them to a subterranean detention facility in Tel Abyad. The stories of these detainees was largely forgotten amongst the thousands of other incidents of enforced disappearance that occurred in territories formerly held by ISIS. Prior to investigating this particular incident, SJAC was investigating the Mansoura Dam security prison. As we were analyzing cases of disappearance in our database, we found a high percentage of those detained at the Mansoura Dam security prison specifically were abducted in this one particular incident in February 2014. Many of the others detained in this incident never even made it to the Mansoura prison, having vanished shortly after their abduction. Now, after an extensive open-source investigation and analysis of documentation and interviews from witnesses, survivors, and families of the missing, SJAC has begun to pursue concrete leads regarding the fates and whereabouts of some of these detainees. However, the search is still ongoing. The exact location of the Tel Abyad detention facility is unknown. Based on our interviews, we believe it was either located at the Tel Abyad courthouse, the former headquarters of the local political security branch, or a school building somewhere in the city. After bringing the detainees to Tel Abyad, ISIS interrogators subjected them to a so-called test as to how correctly they could perform Islamic prayers. Between February 20th and 28th, ISIS transferred this group to a separate location that may have been in another part of the same Tel Abyad facility, but SJAC has not been able to confirm this information. This group of roughly 80 people were never seen again. At this point, ISIS began interrogating the detainees, even those who had passed this so-called religious test. They interrogated them about their knowledge of Kurdish leadership in the region and subjected them to flogging and hanging from the ceiling. By March 5th, ISIS had transferred the 95 detainees who they had deemed to be proper Muslims to the Mansoura Dam security prison. SJAC has since collected the names of these detainees through interviews with multiple survivors, as well as the families of almost 24 missing persons, although more documentation is necessary to verify the identities of this group. Within several days of arriving at Mansoura Dam, ISIS further divided this group allegedly based on how the detainees prayed. After being separated, a survivor saw ISIS execute 2 individuals from the group that had failed the religious tests. This survivor further speculates that ISIS executed everyone who didn't pray according to ISIS standards. He further recalls hearing the voices of this group from a nearby room at the prison. However, other survivors report that the group was transferred to another detention facility entirely. SJAC has not been able to verify these claims. By early or mid-June 2014, ISIS moved the approximately 63 remaining detainees to Menbij, where they remained in several different facilities until some were ultimately released in a prisoner swap in November of that year. Our goal at SJAC is to help families find out the fate and whereabouts of their missing loved ones, and in some cases, find out where they were buried, so that their remains can be returned to them for a proper burial. A critical tool in this work is SJAC's Bayanet software, which helps trace the whereabouts of missing persons by creating profiles of individuals based on documentation and open source research. For example, the trajectory of one survivor from the convoy incident can be traced from his interview, which describes how ISIS, quote,
قام بإخراج جميع الركاب وجمعهم في حظيرة بعد تجريدهم من هواتفهم وبطاقات الهوية الشخصية وضربهم بالسياط واتهامهم بأنهم منتسبين لقوات سوريا الديمقراطية تم إرسالهم إلى كردستان العراق للتدريب.
We hope to use information from survivors, family members, and insider witnesses to determine the fate and whereabouts of the remaining individuals who went missing in this incident. If you have any information about this or other disappearances that occurred in territories formerly held by ISIS in Syria, please contact us on Facebook or email us at info@syriaaccountability.org.